Yesterday we read chapter 12, and Arthur went on his first day of collecting junk for the junk man, and he was having trouble with the cart that is the junk man's, the grocery cart. It kept sticking, and he flipped it over at one point, got kind of angry. Then he ended up getting a bag from Groovy Jim instead. And he went and started collecting trash, looking at the list, and some of the things he kind of substituted. So some things he found, he found the cardboard boxes, which was perfect. Then instead of light bulbs, he found a lamp. Instead of foil, he found a toaster that was really shiny. So he kind of... Yeah, instead of certain things, he would kind of get something else. So instead of coffee cans, he got ginger ale cans. And then at the end it said the junk man, he thought the junk man wouldn't mind that he kind of changed things up a little bit. But apparently he does mind. So we're on page 54. This is chapter 13. It's very short. All right. It was Monday afternoon, 2 days after Arthur's visit to the junk man's garage, when Officer Billy called. Barbara, who wasn't very good at taking messages, had answered the phone. "A person just called for you," Barbara announced as Arthur walked into the living room. She was curled up on the couch eating a bag of Cheetos and watching cartoons. Usually, Arthur got home before his sister, but it was his first day back at junior high after his time in juvie. The day hadn't gone very well, and then his bus had been late. "Who was it?" Arthur asked. "I don't know, but I think she said she was a police officer lady." Arthur felt his stomach drop. It had to have been Officer Billy. "Did you do something wrong again?" Barbara pressed her cheddar orange lips together like a disapproving goldfish. What an image. "No." "Well, she said you need to call her right away." Arthur went to the kitchen phone and dialed the officer's number reluctantly, hoping she'd gone home for the day. Or the year. Of course, she answered on the first ring. "Officer Wanda Billy," a box-shaped voice said. "This is Arthur Owens." There was a long silence. Arthur wasn't sure if Officer Billy was trying to remember who he was, or if he'd already said the wrong thing. "I spoke with Mr. Hampton today," the chilly voice finally continued, "and he informed me that you did not follow the directions he gave you on Saturday. Is that correct, Mr. Owens?" "No, yes, I did follow the directions." Arthur stumbled over his words. "But some things on the list didn't make any sense, so I found a couple of other things for him instead." He tried to explain how he'd left the blue lamp instead of light bulbs, how he'd found the hubcap and the toaster instead of foil. But everything else he asked for was there, pretty much. Arthur's voice trailed off as he realized he was making about as much sense as his mom when she got upset. Plus, Officer Billy didn't seem to be listening anyhow, or to care. Top of 56. "I didn't ask you for a list of excuses," she replied flatly. "I asked you if you followed Mr. Hampton's specific directions." "No," Arthur mumbled, "not exactly all of them." "Next time, follow the directions Mr. Hampton gives you. I don't want to hear from him again. Is that clear?" Officer Billy bellowed into the phone and then hung up. Arthur heard himself saying, "Yes, ma'am," to the dial tone. So the junk man was pretty upset about him substituting some things, and he obviously called Officer Billy and reported it. All right, so now we're on 57. So this is chapter 14. Arthur's first week back at school was about as successful as his first day of probation had been. Going from juvie to school was like going from one extreme to the other. In juvie, you learn to avoid everyone else. If some convict kid wanted to cut in front of you in the food line or steal your banana pudding at supper, you let him. No questions asked. When Arthur got back to school in December, everybody avoided him. He felt as if he were inside an invisible box. Nobody bumped into him in the hallway. Nobody spoke to him. When he sat down in the cafeteria for lunch, the other kids picked up their trays and left. So everyone's kind of shunning him. They're not.
He's gonna pick up a breath and be like,
Yeah, they're kind of either afraid of him or they don't want to hang out with him because now he's got a criminal past. The whole school knew what he'd done, of course. Nothing was secret at Bird Junior High. You couldn't fart without somebody knowing. I'm like 5 years old and laugh at that. On Arthur's first day back, the vice principal, who everybody called Vice, although his name was Mr. Barber, met him at the front door after he got off the bus. He always reminded Arthur of a dry corn stalk. Tall guy, gray wisps of hair on his head, grim-colored suits. "Follow me," Vice said, gripping Arthur firmly by one shoulder and steering him down an almost deserted hallway. "We've moved you." Arthur wasn't sure what moved meant until Vice showed him his new locker in the gym hallway. It was at the opposite end of the school from the other 7th graders' lockers. It didn't take a genius to figure out they'd decided to put him there to keep him away from everybody else. So they isolate his locker, far away from everybody else. So he's in this deserted gym hallway by himself. Plus, the coaches' offices were nearby. Arthur figured the coaches had probably been told to keep a close eye on him and tackle him or something if he did anything violent. For some reason, the thought of the balding, overweight football coaches trying to tackle him made Arthur smile. "What's so funny?" Vice asked. "Nothing," Arthur replied quickly. "This one is yours." Vice opened metal locker 1034, which smelled like foot odor. "Okay," Arthur said, glancing inside, although there was nothing to see except a crumpled O. Henry candy bar wrapper in the bottom. Vice closed the locker again with a clang. "So this is where you'll be for a while, until we see how things are going. With good behavior, you might be able to earn your way back to the 7th grade hallway someday." From the doubtful tone of Vice's voice, Arthur guessed that no matter how good he was, someday was probably never going to come. This reminds me of poor Calvin. He's down at the 7th grade lockers.
Yeah, why is he down there?
I don't know. I think we ran out or something. It wasn't just.
But his name. He should be on the first locker.
No, I know. It should.
Aries,
I don't know.
he should be first.
I don't know why he got up there. I found that out yesterday.
Wait, no, it should be AA because he's AA. Calvin CA. This would be Arius, Calvin.
No, Calvin will be.
No.
Calvin would be first, yeah, because he has the W, yeah. Alphabetical order. If you go by last name, which is what they do.
No, but
Ever.
he's AAA. He should be first.
Your first name doesn't have anything to do with it.
Both their last names start with A.
Yeah.
But Calvin
Okay.
has a D.
Anyway,
So it should go Calvin, Arius, me,
Yeah.
and couldn't care after that.
okay, we're gonna continue. So we're on the top of 59. Later in the week, Arthur had a big quiz in his earth science class. He thought he'd understood the material pretty well. He knew about volcanoes and earthquakes and how continental drift is the way the continents move. He remembered some of the facts he'd learned from before Juvie, how we're all living on big plates that are floating around, nothing is permanent, and how some people are unlucky enough to live in places where the plates already have big cracks in them. Arthur was convinced he was one of those people. Despite the gloom and doom, he liked earth science. It was one of the few classes he looked forward to. Industrial arts was another one that's like shop class. You guys don't have that, unfortunately. Not,
Mr. English, but he doesn't like.
but it's not like the same.
We have to do a doc or a
Yeah,
slide about tools, and then we can.
And then we're gonna.
Oh, really? Oh, good.
And stuff.
Good. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Sam. Nice job.
No problem.
Yeah.
Ready to go, friends?
Huh?
And Juvies now.
That's me.
Yes.
Get whipped
Yes.
with a belt instead.
Have a good day, Sam.
I'm done.
Awesome job.
Come on, buddy.
You did great.
Yeah.
All right. So he has a quiz in earth science. He also really likes his shop class, which is IA, Industrial Arts.
Bye.
Bye, Sam. Industrial Arts was another one, maybe because the teacher reminded him a little of his dad, and he never gave out any homework. But Arthur had missed an entire set of volcano questions on the quiz. Without even trying to be funny, he had to admit to himself that he'd completely blown it. The earth science teacher was a short man from India who everybody called Mr. C because his full name had about 20 letters in it. As he handed the quiz back to Arthur, he shook his head sadly and tapped a dark finger on the missed questions. You must follow directions next time, he said. Top of 60.
It'll be 3 weeks.
Follow directions. Arthur wondered if the guy knew Officer Billy. During his first miserable week at junior high, when he was failing stuff and forgetting stuff and going to his foot odor locker in the gym hall, Arthur often thought about giving up and quitting. His dad had dropped out of school in the 11th grade. Can you drop out of school in 7th grade? No, you can't. He wondered.
Did
And-
your parents want you to?
And no, you can't until you're like 16.